Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the Republic of the Philippines, His Excellency Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Panahon na ng pagbabago, dahil sa ito ay kinakailangan. Tayo na magtulong-tulong na maunlarin ang mahal nating bayan.
Panahon na ng pagbabago, dahil sa ito ay kinakailangan. Tayo na magtulong-tulong na paunlarin ang mahal nating bayan. Panahon na.
Please remain standing for the singing of the Philippine National Anthem, which shall be followed by an invocation.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang mag-ibig, helas ng sinakanan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyag ka ng magiting, sa mandulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagagang tutok sa simoy at sa langit ng bangaw, ay ginatang tulad, awit sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nag-iingin, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may magtitingin. Lumalang araw ng walhati pagsikta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang inigaya na pagkay mga aking, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Let us all put ourselves in the presence of the Almighty. Our loving Father, thank you for gathering us together to recognize your generosity to our beloved country, which the Philippine government corporate sector's contributions manifests. We rely on your mighty power to make all good things possible for the prosperity and good welfare of the Filipinos. May you continue to shower us with your abundance as we fulfill our mandates, and in return, we can share these blessings. Thank you, Lord. Amen.
We may now be seated. To formally begin our program, may we call on Finance Secretary Ralph Recto to deliver his welcome remarks.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin, heads and officers of our GOCCs, fellow workers in government, and friends in the media, good morning. Thank you for coming today to celebrate our government corporate sector. We are particularly privileged to have no less than our President to grace this important occasion. Maraming salamat, Ginoong Pangulo. It is difficult to imagine our economic progress without our GOCCs, from strengthening our banks to providing mass housing, from ensuring reliable public transport to securing energy and water supply in remote areas. Our GOCCs have been the prime movers of our economic development. Aside from delivering on their unique missions, they are also able to turn substantial profits and share their income with the government in the form of dividends. These dividends form a major source of non-tax revenues for the government, making possible our goal of raising more funds without the need to impose additional taxes on our people. They help us hold down deficits and continue funding the President's priority programs for the welfare of all Filipinos without having to borrow more. As of the end of April, non-tax revenues already reached 206.4 billion pesos, an impressive 85% increase from the same period last year. And these continue to grow alongside our tax collections. The BIR, for instance, has already collected close to 1 trillion, or 912.9 billion pesos to be exact, representing a 16.3% increase from last year. The BOC, on the other hand, recorded a 6.3% growth in its collection, reaching 295.2 billion pesos. We expect both our tax and non-tax revenues to dramatically increase over the coming months as we intensify our revenue mobilization efforts. So today, it is only fitting for the President to personally honor the 47 GOCCs for their contributions to driving our development agenda forward. They have not only remitted their expected contributions on time, but many of them have raised their dividend payments from 50% to 75% of their earnings to accelerate our growth. This drove our total dividend collection to 88.6 billion pesos as of May 6, 11 times bigger than roughly 8 billion pesos recorded in the same period last year. We anticipate the total to reach 100 billion pesos by year end. Notwithstanding the diversity of your missions, every peso of your contribution will ultimately go back to benefit every Filipino. A quarter of your 100 billion peso remittance can help build 1,600 kilometers of farm-to-market roads, helping food growers transport their goods seamlessly and at a lower cost. Another quarter can construct more than 8,000 new public classrooms, laying the foundation for a brighter future for our children. The additional 25% of it can irrigate an extra 25,000 hectares of farmland, helping farmers cope with inflation and improve their standard of living. The remaining significant portion can extend a lifeline to more than 208,000 kidney, 52,000 cancer patients, with a month's worth of free dialysis and chemotherapy treatments. All of these can be achieved by our generous contribution of 100 billion pesos, big enough to transform the lives of our people and secure their future. But we can do so much more. For this remarkable achievement, I must thank the Corporate Affairs Group of the Department of Finance for ensuring that our GOCCs are fiscally responsible partners of the government. Credit must also be given to the commitment and hard work put in by the officers and staff of our GOCCs. Maraming salamat sa inyo, including the secretaries who oversees them. Maraming salamat po sa inyong suporta at kooperasyon. On the part of the DOF, we assure you that all these contributions will be managed judiciously with utmost transparency and accountability. In turn, we expect all of our GOCCs to constantly strive for efficiency and the highest standards of corporate governance. We will not leave any room for incompetence and corruption. Together, let us build a globally competitive nation marked by excellent corporate governance and institutions that are truly committed to the people. Dahil kapag ang pamamahala ay tapat, maayos at tumutugon sa taong bayan, patuloy na lalago ang ekonomiya at magiging abot kamay natin ang bagong Pilipinas. Muli, maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. Magandang umaga po.
Thank you, Secretary Recto. In pursuit of a higher growth path that is aligned with the President's administration's 8-point socio-economic agenda and in accordance with Republic Act No. 7656 or the Dividend Law, Secretary Recto has requested GOCCs to increase their dividend remittances from a minimum of 50% to 75% on 2023 net earnings. The remittances have substantially contributed to the non-tax revenue of the national government. And today, we shall recognize all who have contributed their part in nation building, who went above and beyond the call of duty in service of the Filipino people. At this point, we shall be awarding the Certificate of Recognition to our 47 GOCCs, which have remitted a total of 88.56 billion pesos. May we request the President to kindly lead the awarding of the Certificates of Recognition to the representatives of each GOCC. Likewise, may we request Executive Secretary Bersamin and Secretary Recto to please assist the President. May we call on the Land Bank of the Philippines with actual remittance of 32.12 billion, headed by President and Chief Executive Officer Maria Lynette V. Ortiz. LBP is chaired by the DOF Secretary Recto. Thank you, LBP. The Philippine Deposit Insurance Corporation, with actual remittance of 10.68 billion, headed by President and Chief Executive Officer Roberto B. Tan. PDIC is chaired by BSP Governor Remolona. Thank you, PDIC. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, with initial remittance of 9.2 billion, headed by Chairman of the Monetary Board and Governor Eli M. Remolona Jr. Thank you, BSP. The Philippine Ports Authority, with actual remittance of 5.06 billion, headed by General Manager J. Daniel R. Santiago. The PPA is chaired by DOTR Secretary Jaime Bautista. Thank you, PPA. The Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation, with actual remittance of 4.60 billion pesos, headed by Chairman and Chief Executive Officer Alejandro H. Tenco. Thank you, PAGCOR. The Manila International Airport Authority, with actual remittance of 3.46 billion pesos, headed by General Manager Eric Jose C. Ines. The MIAA is chaired by DOTR Secretary Bautista. Thank you, MIAA. The Subic Bay Metropolitan Authority, with actual remittance of 3.07 billion pesos, headed by Chairman and Administrator Eduardo Jose L. Alinio. Thank you, SBMA. The Philippine Charity Sweepstakes Office, with actual remittance of 2.68 billion pesos, headed by General Manager Melquiades A. Robles. Thank you, PCSO. The Philippine National Oil Company, with actual remittance of 2.65 billion pesos, headed by President and Chief Executive Officer Oliver Mario B. Butalid. The PNOC is chaired by DOE Secretary Rafael Lotilla. Thank you, PNOC. The National Transmission Corporation, with actual remittance of 2.17 billion pesos, headed by President and Chief Executive Officer Fortunato C. Lainez. Transco is chaired by DOF Secretary Recto. Thank you, Transco. The PNOC Exploration Corporation, with actual remittance of 1.99 billion pesos, headed by President and Chief Executive Officer Franz Joseph George Alvarez. The PNOC EC is chaired by DOE Secretary Lotilla. Thank you, PNOC EC. The Clark Development Corporation, with actual remittance of 1.80 billion pesos, headed by President Agnes Vicenta T. de Venadera. Thank you, CDC. The Philippine Economic Zone Authority with actual remittance of 1.36 billion pesos, headed by Director General Tereso O. Panga. Thank you, PEZA. The Philippine Guarantee Corporation with actual remittance of 1.14 billion pesos, headed by President and Chief Executive Officer Alberto Francisco E. Pascual. Phil Guarantee is shared by DOF Secretary Recto. Thank you, Phil Guarantee. The Basis Conversion and Development Authority with actual remittance of 1.10 billion pesos, headed by Chairman Delphine N. Lorenzana and represented by President and Chief Executive Officer Joshua M. Bingkang. Thank you, BCDA. The Philippine Reclamation Authority with actual remittance of 1 billion pesos, headed by General Manager and Chief Executive Officer Cesar S. Siador Jr. Thank you, PRA. The Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage System with actual remittance of 1 billion pesos, headed by Chairman Elpidio J. Vega. Thank you, MWSS. Those are the 17 GOCCs that remitted 1 billion and above. The Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation with actual remittance of 772.99 million pesos, headed by President Jovi C. Bernabe. PCIC is shared by DOF Secretary Recto. Thank you, PCIC. The Cebu Port Authority with actual remittance of 500 million pesos, headed by General Manager Francisco C. Comendador III. CPA is shared by DOTR Secretary Bautista. Thank you, CPA. The FIVIDEC Industrial Authority with actual remittance of 333.28 million pesos, headed by Administrator and Chief Executive Officer Joseph Donato J. Bernedo, represented by Acting Deputy Administrator Alberto Jude S. Montes. Thank you, PIA. The National Home Mortgage Finance Corporation with actual remittance of 301.61 million pesos, headed by President Renato L. Tobias. Thank you, NHMFC. The Clark International Airport Corporation with actual remittance of 202.91 million pesos, headed by President and Chief Executive Officer Array A. Perez, represented by Vice President Nancy C. Paglinawan. SIAC is chaired by DOTR Secretary Bautista. Thank you, CIAC. The Sugar Regulatory Administration with actual remittance of 190.97 million pesos, headed by Administrator and Chief Executive Officer Pablo Luis S. Azcona. Thank you, SRA. The National Development Company with actual remittance of 156.29 million pesos, headed by General Manager Antonilo D. Mauricio. Thank you, NDC. The LBP Insurance Brokerage Incorporated with actual remittance of 123.77 million pesos, headed by Acting President and Chief Executive Officer Cherry May T. Frederick. Thank you, LBP IBI. The Philippine Fisheries Development Authority with actual remittance of 122.24 million pesos, headed by Acting General Manager Glenn A. Pangapalan. Thank you, PFDA. Food Terminal Incorporated with actual remittance of 114.07 million pesos, headed by President and Chief Executive Officer Lara R. Brusola. The Laguna Lake Development Authority with 105.61 million pesos, headed by Acting General Manager Senando A. Santiago, represented by Attorney Marilu R. Remullar. LLDA is chaired by DENR Secretary Maria Antonia Luyulo Loizaga. Thank you, LLDA. The Mactan Cebu International Airport Authority with 92.45 million pesos, headed by General Manager and Chief Executive Officer Julius G. Neri. MCIAA is chaired by DOTR Secretary Bautista. Thank you, MCIAA. The LBP Leasing and Finance Corporation with actual remittance of 87.55 million pesos, headed by President and Chief Executive Officer Michael P. Arañas. Thank you, LBP LFC. The UCPB Leasing and Finance Corporation with 67.28 million pesos in actual remittances, headed by Officer in Charge Christine Marie G. Cuevas. Thank you, UCPB LFC. The Authority of Freeport Area of Bataan with actual remittance of 66.84 million pesos, headed by Administrator and Chief Executive Officer Mohammad Hussein P. Pangandaman. Thank you, AFAB. The Social Housing Finance Corporation with actual remittance of 63.92 million pesos, headed by President and Chief Executive Officer Federico A. Lacsa. Thank you, SHFC. The APO Production Unit Incorporated with actual remittance of 53.01 million pesos, headed by General Manager Gil Carlos R. Puyat. Thank you, APO PUI. The National Electrification Administration with actual remittance of 43.06 million pesos, headed by Administrator Antonio Mariano C. Almeda. Thank you, NEA. The LBP Resources and Development Corporation with actual remittance of 16.28 million pesos, headed by President and Chief Executive Officer Ricardo C. Juliano. Thank you, LBP RDC. The Philippine Aerospace Development Corporation with actual remittance of 15.02 million pesos, headed by Acting President and Chief Executive Officer Raymond L. Mitra. Thank you, PADC. The Poro Point Management Corporation with actual remittance of 10.49 million pesos, headed by President and Chief Executive Officer Felix S. Racadio. Thank you, PPMC. The Philippine International Convention Center Incorporated with actual remittance of 10.12 million pesos, headed by General Manager Renato B. Padilla. Thank you, PICC. The John Hay Management Corporation with actual remittance of 7.33 million pesos, headed by President and Chief Executive Officer Alan R. Garcia, represented by Corporate Planning Assistant Beverly Gunaden. Thank you, JHMC. The Batangas Land Company Incorporated and Kamayan Realty Corporation with actual remittance of 3.79 million and 3.44 million pesos respectively, both headed by Chairperson Maria Lourdes F. Rebueno. Thank you, BLCI and KRC. The Tourism Promotions Board with actual remittance of 3.62 million pesos, headed by Chief Operating Officer Ms. Maria Margarita M. Nograles, represented by Deputy Chief Operating Officer Venancio C. Manuel III. Thank you, TPB. The Philippine Mining Development Corporation with actual remittance of 1.66 million pesos, headed by President and Chief Executive Officer Alberto B. Sipaco Jr., represented by Vice President Lucas R. Vidad. Thank you, PMDC. The Alabang Santo Tomas Development Incorporated with actual remittance of 1.38 million pesos, headed by President and Chief Executive Officer Luis F. Sison, represented by Board Corporate Secretary Roel Z. Mabaza. Thank you, ASTD. The NDC Philippine Infrastructure Corporation Incorporated with actual remittance of 946,205, headed by President Saturnino H. Mejia. Thank you, NDC PIC. Finally, the Philippine Rice Research Institute with actual remittance of 530,600 pesos, headed by Executive Director John C. De Leon, represented by Deputy Executive Director Sofia T. Borja. Thank you, PRRI. Thank you, Mr. President, and congratulations to our GOCCs. At this juncture, may we call on retired Chief Justice and Executive Secretary Lucas P. Bersamin to introduce our guest of honor and keynote speaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the Republic of the Philippines, His Excellency Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Thank you very much to our Executive Secretary Luke Bersamin. Please take your seats for his kind introduction. Of course, the Department of Finance Secretary, Secretary Ralph Recto, and the officials of the government-owned or controlled corporations, my fellow workers in government, cabinet secretaries who are here this morning with us, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a warm and pleasant day to all of you. I am pleased to be here today to celebrate the invaluable role of government-owned or controlled corporations in the advancement of our society through this year's GOCC's Day. First, let me greet the organizer of this event, the Department of Finance, a happy 127th founding anniversary. Thank you for hosting this annual event. It goes beyond merely recognizing the GOCCs for their contributions to the nation's coffers. This occasion also encourages greater performance and excellence across government corporations that hold a major stake in our country's progress. With that said, let me acknowledge the GOCCs represented here by their heads and their board members. The passion, the drive, and energy that you have demonstrated in your respective institutions have contributed significantly to the growth and prosperity of our people and of our economy. But it is wrong to view GOCCs as mere revenue generators. The truth is, GOCCs are chartered to be service providers first and profit centers afterwards. As such, your value and worth are not to be found in the dividends alone that you remit to the Treasury, but on the services that you render to people. It will also be incorrect to relegate GOCCs to the rear column of government, behind national and local governments. For the truth is, whether financially autonomous or subsidy-dependent, GOCCs are public trusts designed to be government frontline institutions. So today, let me thank you for the services that you have rendered and for the dividends that you have remitted. Last year, dividends remitted reached an unprecedented 100 billion pesos. I am sure that we will surpass it this year. And if the amount remitted as of May 3, which is 88.56 billion pesos, is any indication, then we are on track to meet that goal. Since those dividends also come from the people, let me assure you that they will be carefully spent like the precious taxes that come from the sweat of their brow. It will be plowed back to them through projects and programs that will improve their lives today and also create a better tomorrow for our children. It will be invested back to growth-inducing activities that create jobs and harness opportunities. In the end, these dividends will yield more dividends, unleashing a virtuous cycle that lifts up those we serve to a higher standard of living. To put it in the proper perspective, the dividends are not being remitted to the government to be stored, but to help the people. For after all, they are the GOCC's true stakeholders. Our call for higher earnings is a call for efficiency. And this goes especially to the agencies that deal directly with the people. This should not be taken as a license to hike the fees that they pay. The established canon in setting fees and charges that common citizens pay remain inviolable. That they should only be enough to recoup the expenses made in rendering these services and should not be a pretext for profit. To the GOCCs, who by their mandate precludes them from remitting incomes to the public coffers, You can actually help the people by reducing the taxpayer subsidy that you require. But to the GOCCs who render essential services, the government's commitment to fund your operational needs remains steadfast and firm. Whatever the function is, I trust that you will all be practitioners of sound corporate governance. Let every unit in the GOCC sector stand as paragons of dedication to service and innovation, to be adept to changes and adaptable to new developments. To the men and women of the Department of Finance, I trust that you will remain immovable and judicious in promoting the fiscal health and accountability of our GOCCs. Down the road, where your building stands, is the kilometer zero marker in front of the statue of our national hero in Luneta. That is, however, for our road network. But insofar as our country's economic roadmap is concerned, the kilometer zero are your agencies, because projects can only move forward if you have found the revenues for them. Plans remain as dreams. Blueprints cannot move from being just wish lists. Rhetoric can never be a reality unless we marshal the resources. And that holds true for the GOCCs here. Your remittances will not only allow our economy to recover, but it would help cut our borrowings and lessen the pressure to inflict higher taxes on the people. I look forward to seeing a concerted, all-inclusive, whole-of-government approach in our development efforts, one that is true to our vision of the bagong Pilipinas that we aspire for our people. Again, I thank each of you for the desire and the endeavor to serve our beloved country. Mabuhay ang mga GOCC, mabuhay ang bagong Pilipinas. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat at maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this point, may we request the President to kindly grant us a photo opportunity. First, may we call on stage the first set of GOCCs. Again, may we call on stage the first set of GOCCs. We ask the second set of GOCCs to please stand by on the right side of the stage. Thank you. Please exit to your right. Second set of GOCCs, you may now proceed on the stage. To the third set of GOCCs, select DOF officials and Pasay City Mayor Imelda Calixto Rubiano. May we ask you to please stand by on the right side of the stage. Thank you. Please exit to your right. May we now ask the third set of GOCCs, select DOF officials, and Pasay City Mayor Imelda Calixto Rubiano to proceed on stage.
Thank you. Please exit to your right. At this point, may we request the President and the rest of our stage party to please proceed downstage and grant us a group photo with all of our attendees.
Likewise, may we invite our attendees to gather at the center and join the President for a photo opportunity. Ready? Please smile at the camera. At the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much, Mr. President, for granting us a photo opportunity. That concludes our program. Thank you, Mr. President, for gracing the event today. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, the President of the Republic of the Philippines, His Excellency Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. We would like to request everyone to please remain on your respective places until the President has left the venue.